In this tutorial, we will try to look at how to install VMware Workstation and how to create an image with that. Now, VMware Workstation is not an absolute must. If you already have a virtual box and if you are happy with that, you can use that. However, some people might like VMware Workstation better than VirtualBox, and even I personally like VMware Workstation more than VirtualBox. There are some reasons for that. One is detection of USB devices, and particularly the USB 3 devices is much better and seamless in case of VMware Workstation as compared to VirtualBox. Even VMware Fusion, which is again from VMware, is better than VirtualBox. But VirtualBox is free, so from a student's perspective, or like from people who are like does not have that much of financial support, they might still prefer to have VirtualBox, and it's a good software. It does not have as many glitches as some other hypervisors, but it's relatively good. But at the same time, I feel Workstation Pro is kind of a niche, and it's balance. You have to balance it out between money and between the niche features, whether it really helps. In any case, you can either try or you can buy. If you go for a buy, the current cost for 15.5 is $250, and if you want to try, I believe it's a 30 days trial period. You can download. I already have it downloaded and I have a license already, so I'll go ahead and do installation. Installation is fairly simple. Just go ahead and do a double click, that's all. So let's give it a couple of seconds for that to complete. I mean to say, unbundling of the exe and trying to expand the exe and go ahead with the installation. Then it's a next. Accept the license agreement. Click on next. Enhanced keyboard driver. You may not be needed, but since I'm using Apple keyboard and sometimes it helps, so I'll just say yes. I don't want to join for improvement, and I don't want to look for an update. I want to do update myself. In your case, you can choose the relevant option. So it's copying some files. It's a fairly simple installation, self-explanatory. You don't have to do much. It's a plain text English. If you can understand English and if you have little bit of knowledge, you might have installed something in the past, you should be able to do it without any help. And if you see here, installing virtual network drivers, these are the kind of drivers like I was referring that in hypervisor you do a virtualization of the hardware resources, so it will present a virtual NIC interface, those kind of things. So I'll go ahead and do a finish, and so I'll just pause the video and set up the license. Alright, so we have given the license. Now I have opened after providing the license and everything. Even if you don't give the license, you should be still able to use it for 30 days. You just have to register for the trial. So here I'll go for create a new virtual machine and I'll select custom. So typically it will choose the default settings, but I would like to define the configuration, size, CPU, memory, everything on my own. So I'll choose custom. And here it's something called as hardware compatibility. VMware has a different set of hardware compatibles between across variety of products. 12.x being the latest. This does not necessarily means 12.x of the version 12.12 whatever we are using. This is a hardware compatibility version. So if you choose 12.x, there will be a corresponding compatibility to 8.x and 12.x. What it means is VMware Workstation 12.x is compatible with Fusion 8.x, and these are all the supported configurations. Like it can support up to 64 GB of memory. Let's suppose you choose VMware Workstation 8, so it's 64 GB and 8 processors for 12. it's up to 16 processors. So that's where the difference comes up. And it's also compatible by default with ESX server. If you choose an older version, it may not be supported. So then you will have to choose ESX server. Like if you choose VMware Workstation 5, hardware compatibility 5, so even though you create a VMs on VMware Workstation 12, and if you choose Workstation 5.x, that means you take that image which was created in VMware Workstation 12 and you can use that image in VMware Workstation 5. However, if you choose VMware Workstation 12 now and you create the image in 12, and if you take this virtual image VMDK file, you will not be able to use it directly without any conversion in VMware Workstation 5. Okay, so having said that, let's go ahead, and I will choose here, I will install the operating system later. Then I will choose Linux, and in the Linux you have Ubuntu and Ubuntu 64. My Ubuntu is 64, so I'll choose 64. And wherever the locations you have, I'll just choose desktop for my purpose, or I'll just leave as it is for now. Number of processors, I'll give 2 processors. Now since I have up to 16 cores here, so but I'll still give 2 processors. Memory, I'll give 4 GB 4096 MB. And then networking part I'll cover later, but let's leave this as it is as a default. Bridge network means it will be a separate system. It will appear as though it's one more computer on your router. NATed means this particular virtual machine will not be visible from outside. However, it will go using the NAT translations through the host machines. So my host is a Windows machines, Windows 10, and this is a Linux. So whatever Linux communicates with the outside world, it has to go through the Windows. So the packet will appear as if the packets are coming from the Windows, and when Windows receives the packet, it does the necessary translations and give it back to the Linux. And then host only network, and do not use a network connection. This is network connection. There's as if there is no network adapter. Use host only network means it's like a private network. It's just connectivity between host to host. So I'll cover the networking part later on, but let's leave the default option as it is. Go ahead. Leave this also. This is the LSI logic disk controller. So I'll leave the default options. Again, you have like ID, SCSI, SATA. So if you don't have that SATA drive, ID is older technology. If you don't have a SATA drive, most of the people uses on the desktop environment is SCSI drive, which is SCSI. I'll use that. And now it's a new, create a new virtual disk, because there's no virtual disk which I need to attach to now. So I'll just say create a new virtual disk. Size of my disk is 50 GB. Store as a single disk. If I don't say store as a single disk, whatever this 50 GB is there, it might get split into 2 GB of 25 images. So 25 disk images, and sometimes it's hard to manage that. So I always use store virtual disk as a single file. There might be some performance penalty if you do like that, and splitting gives you performance benefit, but it's not that much so that it will help you in any considerable ways. Allocate all disk now means if you give a 50 GB, all the 50 GB from your host machine would be taken away. Or if you don't do that, then it means it will dynamically grow. So even though you give a 50 GB disk image for your workstation and your workstation uses just 10 GB, from the host machine it will just take away only 10 GB, and as and when the guest machine keeps on growing in size, it will take that much disk space from the host machine. But if you say allocate now, it will take it right now in a single shot 50 GB, and 50 GB will be gone from the host disk. So I'll not do that. Then all the default options, customize hardware. So you just review some settings here. If you want to give a CD-ROM drive, you have to give, because you need to boot Ubuntu. So I already have an ISO downloaded for my Ubuntu, and I'll say use ISO image. Select on browse. Wherever I have downloaded, select that. So what will happen is this will be treated as this ISO, whatever I have downloaded will be treated as a virtual CD-ROM drive. Now finish it and boot it, power on this virtual machine. So it's booting up Ubuntu. Okay, so once it boots up, you will have two options. One is try Ubuntu and one is install Ubuntu. Try Ubuntu is like a live disk. You should be able to boot up the Ubuntu, use it for different purpose, but you should not be able to save it until and unless you have to mount the disk exclusively. And that's a headache. Sometimes you write to a default directory or default locations, and that might be living in your RAM or as a temp.fs, and it will be lost. So if you want to have a persistent installation, go for a install Ubuntu. This is something like you want to do some hack or try something quickly without leaving a trace, you might do it, try Ubuntu. But if you want to do as a development machine where you want to store stuff, go for install Ubuntu. Choose your keyboard layout, English for me. And this third-party libraries would install additional drivers for your network card, sound card, other stuff. Maybe install some proprietary plugins also, plugins with respect to MP3 and those kind of things. So it has a lot of good features. We'll select that. Go ahead, click on continue. It will take a couple of seconds. Okay, here there are two options for the installation. One is erase disk and install. Erase disk and install everything. What it will do is it will wipe your disk and choose the default partition layout and everything. I don't want to do that. I want to do and choose my own partitioning scheme. What is the size of my disk and everything. So my size is 50 GB. I'll say new partition. There will be a free space. In the free space there will be one swap area. I will choose a 8 GB of swap area, approximately 8 GB. The swap will be used when the RAM is filled up. Then the swap space is the one which will be used to swap out the contents from the RAM to the swap area, and the RAM would be free to execute other new fresh instructions. Then you can have reminders of the file system as root /. This is not /root, just a /, and there it will be like 45 GB. You could have a separate boot partition, but that's not needed if you are on desktop kind of environment. For enterprise you need that. There are certain reasons you need to have separate boot partitions. Let's suppose someone wants to fill up your disk, and once the disk is filled up, that means /boot is not a separate one, /boot is also filled up, and you may not be able to install or push new kernel. The system might become unusable. It may fail to boot at all. But if you have a separate boot partition, no one will write to boot partition. Not a normal user will write to a boot partition, and you will have a root partition. And even if root file system gets filled up, the system may still boot up because /boot is a separate partition and that's not being filled up. Those are the advantages, but those are from the enterprise or perspective. If you are a student setting up an environment to practice C, C++, shell scripting, or any kind of programming, Python, you don't need to do all those kind of things. Okay, continue. You can choose your locations, whatever locations you have. So I'll just choose the default for me and put the name of your machine. Select your username and password. Basically set up your username and password. Login automatically means when you boot the virtual machine, without providing the username, it will log into the GUI console, and required password means it will ask you for the password. From the security perspective, you should always try to do a required password until and unless you are sure that no one else is using the machine and no one else will have a physical access to the machine. Then you can choose login automatically. It will install and I'll come back. I'll pause the video and come back. So once the installation is done, it will ask you to restart the system. So click on restart now. So it will say please remove the installation media and then press enter. So I already have it removed. By default it already removes automatically for you, but if not, then you can go ahead and do in the settings. So here you have these settings, and inside the settings you will have the CD drive. Use the ISO image. You can just connect it, power on, connect it. If it is not there, if it is already connected, remove that. Okay, so test, give your password, and you're ready to go. Okay, so I'll escape this, go to the terminal right away, type terminal in that small so applications window, and first thing you will do is update. So your version is can be shown by cat etc star dot star release star, and this is 20.04. So if you want to see if there is any update since the release of 20.04, you can say sudo apt-get -y update and your sudo password, and it will check, and if there is any update it will install the update. I believe there is no update because it's a fairly recent release, so that should be fine. Now you have to install certain packages for your dev work, like I'll say sudo apt-get install make, then gcc g++ build essential. So make is for makefile, gcc is a compiler, g++ is for C++ compiler, build essential includes couple of other libraries and dependencies with respect to that, autoconf and other stuff like that. So if you do build essential, it will install all those packages. So once this is done, your system should be ready to use. Also, apart from that, you might also want to install the SSH. So SSH client is there, but for SSH the client server you need to have this, the server mode. So you can only install one package at a time, so the installation is still going on, so there is a lock. So you should not be installing any other package until and unless this is not being done. So you can, after that is being done, you can give this and it will install OpenSSH server. Once you do that, the server would be running. That means SSH daemon would be running on your Ubuntu, and from some other remote machine you should be able to log in, or from your Windows machine using PuTTY you should be able to log into your virtual machine from the Windows machine itself. So I think that's all. There's nothing much you should be able to do. Once this installation is done, go ahead and install the SSH also, sudo apt-get. Apt-get and aptitude, you can think like they are same. There is some difference, minor difference, but ignore it for now. For all practical purpose, they are same. So thank you all for watching this video, and I hope to see you in my next video. You have a nice time. Bye.